Hello YouTube, this is Jared back again with a different video than normal. This is going to be my 1000th mini, and so after several years of painting, almost 3 now, I have decided to do my 1000th mini, taking a break from the Skaven project, and this guy will be number 1000. And so what I did for number 100 is I went out and bought him, and I built and painted him in a single day to mark and see how my progress was coming along. What can I do in one day? And so that's what I want to do again. This was, of course, before I had a YouTube channel, but I want to do this guy in one day. So this will be a one-day project to see what I can do. And I'm going to try to set up a time lapse and see if that works and get this guy painted today. So that's the goal. And as I build him, maybe I'll reminisce over what painting 1,000 minis has been like, because it's been quite the project. So let me switch over here to the time lapse.
Editing, Jared here. This was the very first time lapse I ever shot, and I had so much fun making it. I see why other YouTubers make so many time lapses of them building and painting models. I'm going to probably do this again. This was honestly one of the easiest kits I ever put together. Really straightforward, really simple, everything fit together. I used a little bit of Tamiya super glue here. Didn't have to do any gap filling, even though I have my sprue glue ready to go, but this kit came together really, really easy, which gave me more time to work on the basing.
While I'm waiting for the glue to dry, it occurs to me that a head taker should have some extra heads. So I've got an extra little base here, and I was poking around in my bits box, and I have a whole bunch of extra Stormcast heads I didn't use. And so I think I'm going to paint these heads up as dead heads and then leave them around his base. I've got that bit of cork that I'm going to use because that's what I've used for my Chaos Space Marines to make them a little taller and more intimidating. But it'd be fun to have just a few heads laying around the head taker, and I'll cover them the appropriate amount of blood, and then we'll get some of these skulls to go with it so he can have plenty of executed. Let's see, how many skulls is too many skulls? I think it's just until the base is full, right? That's what I think anyways. Let's do these 3 as well. The skull box was definitely a good investment. It feels a little silly to buy a box of just skulls until you realize that just about every faction has skulls on something somewhere. There's a few factions that don't use skulls, but most of them do.
Editing, Jared here again. I'm going to be speeding the rest of this footage up because it's just a lot of me sanding and placing skulls, and I put all of them on this little base here with the sticky tack to prime them. And then it occurred to me, why not just glue them down to the base, and then I can prime them all on the base and not have to glue them on afterwards. So that's exactly what I did. I went back and I decided to add a little more cork to my base, and I cleaned it up, measured it, and added all the skulls. And so that's what this footage is me bumping the camera and then proceeding to glue this base together. And I'm really happy with how this base eventually comes out. But as with everyone who does any kind of basing, it's a lot of trial and error. And one of the things I learned the hard way many times is always make sure the feet fit on the base. And even still, I measure this out several times, and I still have one of the feet hanging over slightly more than I wanted to. So go figure on that. That's just part of building up with cork. And so that's exactly what I did. So I've always enjoyed basing, though with my Chaos Space Marines, I'm not quite as happy with the basing as some of the other armies I've done. The cork's a nice touch and it builds it up a little bit, but it always feels like it needs just a little bit more something. So for this one, you'll see in a second here, I'm gonna try adding a little bit of my basing sand and seeing if that gives it a little bit more texture. And then with this miniature, with a master executioner, it makes sense to add some blood effects. So the blood texture works really well. Having that extra glue, ironically, on the base and the sand on the base helps to break up the cork as well too. And so I could have probably spent a lot more time on this if I wanted, but this was a one-day challenge. I wanted to see what I could do in a day, and I spent about, all told, I'm going to spend about an hour, hour and a half on the cutting and basing, maybe, and then I guess including priming, yeah, it was about an hour and a half. And then the actual painting of the miniature was just under 2 hours. And so, all told, I'm saying it's a one-day challenge, but with the busy day and grocery shopping and everything else that needs to happen on a Saturday, some yard work, it really wound up being about a 4-hour challenge to get this miniature from out of the box to completely done and decaled and based and the whole bit. So I'm really happy with it, and you'll see that going on here. One of the things I learned in painting 1,000 miniatures that's so important is the 3-foot rule, being happy at 90% done, not feeling like every single detail needs equal amounts of attention. And so being able to find 2 or 3 details that are important, picking them out, picking out a good color scheme that really pops everything out, and just getting it to a place where you're happy with it, not in a place where it looks really good. I think one of the traps that most people fall into when they start miniature painting is we all watch tutorials on YouTube. That's what I did. And we all love the YouTubers who are master painters. There's so many good ones out there. Whether you're watching Squidmar or Vince or Eons of Battle, those are some of the ones I started with, or a couple of the other good guys out there. But those guys have professional lighting, and they're zooming in on the microscopic details. And it's no wonder it takes them 6 hours, 12 hours, 20 hours a model. But if you try to paint like they do, and you spend 20 hours a model without their years and years of experience, you're never going to really get anywhere in terms of being happy and learning to be happy with your own painting, because you're going to be comparing yourself to these master painters and Golden Demon winners or whoever you're watching. And so one of the things I'd encourage you with is paint to what makes you happy. Whether you want to paint for 2 weeks on one miniature, or you want to paint for 4 hours and call it a day. Whatever you like, whatever you think looks good, that's good enough. And so making sure that you paint to your standard, not to somebody else's standard, I think is really important. So that's something I've definitely learned in 1,000 miniatures. All right, here's the time lapse of me painting. So took about an hour and a half, and I've sped this footage up. But it was a lot of fun and a lot of paints. For this miniature, there's probably 20, 30 paints that go on this guy in terms of color. So I'm switching back and forth. One thing you'll notice, I have 2 cups of water. One is for metallics, one is non-metallics. I have a package of blue handle paintbrushes and a package of black handle paintbrushes. Black handle is non-metallics, and blue handle is for the metallics. Though I'm pretty sure towards the end of this video, I do mix the waters up at some point. Other thing of note in painting 1,000 miniatures, I've been through 2 wet palettes. I know everybody swears by them, but when you're painting one miniature, you're only painting for an hour, so having a wet palette got moldy twice, at least twice, and it really didn't save me a lot of paint. It didn't save me a lot of time, and it's important to learn not to glob massive amounts of paint on the palette. Even with a wet palette, you're wasting a lot of paint, and so I've learned that you really don't need to go crazy on buying fancy palettes or airbrushes. If you're good, you can paint straight out of the pot. Once you get the knack for the paint consistency, you're going to be just fine. I found a third-party seller who makes decals for the Red Corsairs. So I also put the Red Corsair decals because that's who my Chaos Space Marines represent. I really like Huron Blackheart and the Red Corsair, so I was really happy to do that, though. It's still a little bit shiny, so I need to put some more matte finish on these guys. But otherwise, really happy with how this guy came out. You can see we've got all of the bone on there. That Skeleton Horde and Wrathbone combo is amazing. You can see how all of the colors just absolutely pop. And who doesn't love finishing a miniature with a little bit of the blood for the blood god and some Nuln Oil? So this was a lot of fun to paint. One other weird challenge of this particular mini is I had to paint the undead heads, and so I needed a couple extra paint colors to get that. And then I also had to paint a Space Marine helmet, so I had to use the colors from my Loyalists. So I had to bring in a different red, so it was clear that the helmet was not an ally, but one of his enemies. And so we got a Sergeant helm, and I used a Mephiston red to contrast the Khorne red of his armor. And then for the undead bodies, I used Slaanesh gray with a green wash. I don't remember exactly which green it was, but I put a green wash over that to get that sickly undead color. So that was a lot of fun. Alright, so here is the comparison. The Chaplain was my 100th mini, and the Master of Executions is my 1000th mini. So that was a lot of fun to compare. One of the big things that stands out is just how much bigger my paint collections got. And so I have lots of basing bits and lots of shades and washes and contrast paints and the blood effect paints and all these other things that I could mix in. I didn't really have the palette back in the day when I first started painting those first 100 minis. And so it's been a lot of fun to see just how much the paints have changed. But just feeling the difference in brush control, feeling how different it is to finally be able to paint fast and efficient and actually be able to knock out something like the trim and not be stressed and worry about it. I still have a little bit of shaky hands. I think my hands are always going to shake, and one of the reasons I paint is to help with the handshakes. But I am still able to get the effect I want and get all the little details as best as I can. So I can tell that in the hour or so it took me to paint this guy, I was able to knock out a lot of trim and a lot of detail and the bone effects, and then make it look as good as I wanted to make it look. So that's really, really exciting to me, and feeling like I was able to get the same quality in half the time as it took to paint the 100th mini, because I feel like that one took a lot longer. I remember putting at least 3 or 4 hours into him, so I feel like I spent a lot longer on the 100th mini compared to the 1000th mini. But it's really nice that I'm able to kind of get the effects I want, the looks I want. I'm able to look at all the individual details, and so I know how to get the head and the skin and the head, the little mini heads that he's cut off, and the bones and all these things, and I know exactly how to paint the individual parts because I've done it on so many other kits before, and that's just something that really comes with experience. So that's been a lot of fun and a big takeaway from this project. Alright, now it's time for the most important part of this video. Huron Blackheart has to welcome the Master of Executions to his Chaos Space Marines. I'm joking a little bit, of course, but here's my Huron Blackheart. I got the official mini, and he is a tiny guy because he's such an old kit. He was a resin mini I painted a while back, and just one of the first big skull bases I did. Not the first one, of course, but he was a lot of fun. And so I had a great time painting him up and painting up the rest of the force. And here are the rest of my Chaos Space Marines. This isn't all of them. This is just a little sampling. I figured I'd take a picture of him with some of his buddies. I got to do an army showcase eventually. I'm still not 100% in love with their bases. I really need to learn to do some more work with the cork, because right now they're just standing on the cork, which gives them the height, but they just need pushed a little bit more. So I'm waiting for inspiration to strike on what I can do to really elevate the cork bases. But Huron's base and the Master of Execution both look really good. So I'm happy with both of those bases, and I'll slowly add to this army in the future. And eventually I'll have to make a video and tell the story about why in the world I even painted this army, because it's kind of a fun story. But thank you for sticking with me, and I've had so much fun painting these minis. My next video I'll be going back to the Skaven Challenge. I've got a lot of catching up to do, but I appreciate you watching this video, and I know it was a little bit different, but I hope you enjoyed it and kind of got to see painting from beginning to the end in only one day. So it was fun for me to make, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much, and I appreciate each and every one of you who likes and subscribes and leaves comments. So have a wonderful day.